Setting up your first quiz in Moodle needn't be a painful process. Providing you follow a few basic formatting rules when preparing your questions, you can create your quiz in minutes rather than hours. If, as a starting point, you're looking to set up a simple multi-choice quiz, this video will take you through the steps one by one. Let's begin by looking at the key steps involved in building any quiz in Moodle. Unsurprisingly, step 1, preparing the questions that you want to quiz your students on. Step 2, importing these questions into the question bank in your Moodle course. That's not as scary as it might sound. It basically involves a drag and drop of the file containing your questions into a box in Moodle. Step 3, setting up the quiz, telling Moodle when to open and close the quiz, how many attempts at the quiz it should allow each student to make, and various other options that you may wish to adjust, depending primarily on whether the quiz is to be used formatively or as a summative means of assessment. Step 4. Add your questions to your quiz. Basically, tell Moodle which group of questions to use. And then step 5, trying out the quiz, checking for errors. Simple way to do this is to use the preview facility, which should be easy enough to find. But to really check that you have everything just the way you want it, you should consider either setting up a student account for yourself in Moodle using a private email, or enrolling a test student into your course and setting up what's called a user override so that you can take the quiz as the test student. In both cases, please just ask your DMeld for help. Okay, so I said that I was going to show you a straightforward method of setting up a multi-choice quiz, and I'm going to do that now. At the start of the video, I said that in preparing your questions, you'd need to follow a few basic formatting rules. 2 do's and 1 don't. So just as you see in this example, you must not prefix your questions with numbers, and you must prefix your multi-choice options with capital letters, followed by a full stop and a space, and finish each question with the word answer shown in capital letters, followed by a colon and a space, and of course the letter for the right answer. Now this isn't difficult to do, but it has to be right, as Moodle is relying on the document being set out in this way to be able to know, for example, when one question ends and another starts. Once you have all of your questions prepared, you need to make a plain text version of the file. To do this in Word, save your file as a docx in case you want to return to it in the future. Then go to Save As and change the type to plain text. The next task is to import your questions into Moodle. Questions need to be stored within categories in the course question bank. It's good practice to make a new category for a new set of questions. To find categories, click on the cog icon in the top right of your course homepage and then click More. From the bottom of the Categories page, add a category by simply entering a name and clicking Add Category. Then switch across to the Import tab, and from the top of the list of file format options, select the Akin format. Beneath that, select the category that you've just created and then drag and drop the plain text file that you prepared earlier onto the rectangular box in the Import Questions from File section. Now click the pink Import button, and moments later you should see a confirmation screen like this. If there are any issues, they'll most likely be due to formatting errors. For example, if you prepared your questions in a Google Doc, check that Google didn't change your lettering options to numbers. Okay, so you've got your questions in Moodle. Now it's time to set up your quiz. Return to your course homepage and run through the following steps. First of all, turn editing on, and then at the foot of whichever section you want to add your quiz, click on Add an Activity or Resource and select Quiz. You'll now be looking at quite a long list of options, but don't be too put off, as most of these options can be left set at their default values. What you will need to do is set when you want the quiz to be available to your students, and then set the number of attempts that your students should be allowed to make at the quiz. If the quiz is to be graded, you may only want to allow 1 or 2 attempts. If it's formative, then you could leave attempts allowed set to unlimited. Further down the page, you'll find review options, which by default are set for a formative quiz. For a summative quiz, I'd recommend deselecting the checkboxes that I've circled on the slide. If for some reason you don't want the marks from this quiz to be automatically made available to students when the quiz closes, you'll also need to turn off the marks checkbox in the last column. In most cases, that's it in terms of settings adjustments. So at this point, you can click on the Save and Display button at the foot of the page, and then click Edit Quiz. And finally, we come to adding your questions to the quiz. In the top right of the screen, you'll see the word Add. Click this and select From Question Bank. A window will now open, inviting you to select the appropriate category. So choose your category, and then further down the page, look for the word Question in pink text. Because to the left of this is a checkbox, which, when selected, will select all the questions in your category. Now all that remains is to click the button labelled Add Selected Questions to the quiz. So your quiz is now set up and ready to check over, so look for the preview option to help you with this, or talk to your DMLD about other methods of testing, as I mentioned at the start of this video. I hope you found this helpful and are encouraged to set up your own quiz if you haven't just done so. Before I go, 2 final points. If you prefer working through a static document rather than a video, please visit this link. And in the last slide, I mentioned that you can add random questions from a category. If you've imported a larger number of questions than you need for your quiz, say 30, but you only actually need 10, you could consider using this alternative method to get Moodle to randomly select a specified number of questions so that 2 students sitting side by side will each get a different set of questions, or a student attempting the quiz multiple times will be asked a different set of questions each time round. Thanks very much for your time.